Hi, I'm Salomé Viljoen, and I'm an assistant professor here at Michigan Law. The very sort of short, crisp answer is that I think about how the law thinks about data. And the reason it matters how the law thinks about data is that how we legally sort of structure what information is what gives it a lot of the properties that it has. It's what makes it valuable for certain entities to collect. It's what makes it important for them to share or not share that information. So the way the law thinks about data is a lot of what makes data the asset that it is in our digital economy. I think the shift in legal perspective that we ought to take from thinking about personal data and personal controls to social data and social controls. Like, the big of big data is innovations in computation, so changes in chip manufacturing, improvements in processing powers, ubiquitous access to smartphones, which allows companies to derive those sorts of insights from individual information. And so what comes with big data in kind of like a simplistic sense is that the business model isn't to, as I say, like collect Salomé information that you stick in the Salomé folder to figure out who I am as a consumer, but it is to place me in all of these relationships. I'm likely a millennial. I'm likely to own a cat. Like other millennial cats, I'm likely to purchase my cat like this fancy ceramic cat bowl, right? Like, that's what big data sort of allows companies to develop business models around, and that's why I think legally we have to shift our perspective from personal data to social data. So I just use the word social data to kind of distinguish it from personal data, mostly because I don't think that a whole lot of what we think of as personal data is in fact personal. It's not just about you as one individual, it's almost always also about you in relation to other people. So I use social data to say, like, data is never just about you, it's almost always about us. And that's what makes it both potentially very valuable. And that's also oftentimes where some of the problems creep in with all of this sort of ubiquitous data collection that goes on in the digital economy. Segueing to some of the problems, so much of what makes problems like mass surveillance a pernicious issue and sort of an issue that's kind of defining a lot of the conversations around digital technologies today has to do with the fact that data collection can provide really fine-grained insights about you on the basis of characteristics that you have. So what's kind of a challenge about that is that even if I were to go completely off the grid, if I were to get rid of my Roomba, throw my smartphone in the trash, try to move off the grid, because I have sort of certain features and because a whole lot of other people are not moving off of the grid, if some entity wanted to make a very accurate prediction about who I am, what kind of characteristics I have, what sorts of behaviors I'm likely to engage in, they don't need to collect data about me because they have a lot of data in a lot of sort of rich ways about a lot of people that share features with me. And so, again, I think talking about social data helps us kind of get at that aspect. But at the same time, I think that I don't think I would describe the problem as that we're collecting too much data necessarily. It's that we're probably collecting data with like the wrong social goals in mind. So I wouldn't say that we should reject all surveillance, like never get any data collection. I would say the problem is more something like we know way too much about my like shoe purchasing preferences and probably not nearly enough about how the daily patterns of my life contribute to my CO2 emissions. I think herein lies like a lot of the interesting sorts of legal questions around data and data governance. So there are all sorts of ways in which we can structure the different kinds of legal rights and legal interests in information to facilitate being able to use all of the social data that we've collected about ourselves and our society to interrogate exactly those sorts of questions. Currently, the main way that the law kind of regulates data collection is it gives me a contractual right and I can say yes or no. But there are all kinds of ways in which that doesn't necessarily map on to facilitating helping researchers understand things like CO2 emissions. So what do those legal regimes look like? They look like tiered access controls. They look like research access. So if ecological researchers want to gain access to social data, they have to go through rigorous controls. They need to sort of present the research plan that they have, how they're going to preserve individual privacy, what the goal of the research is, where they're going to publish it, how they're going to protect the information they're given access to, and then produce really valuable findings. There's a big story from a group of economists, including Raj Chetty at Harvard, just recently in the New York Times, where they used access to social media data to get an extremely fine-grained picture of sort of the geography of inequality and how inequality gets reproduced. And that's extremely socially useful for us to have if we care about solving durable inequality, intergenerational inequality. But in order to gain access to that, they had to enter into all sorts of specialized agreements. I'm really interested in how we can kind of scale that up and regularize that kind of use of all of this incredibly valuable information that we have. I think my parents would have you believe that I was destined forever to be a lawyer because I was definitely the family advocate and like annoying know-it-all. And so whenever I would like debate with them, they're like, "You're gonna go to law school," and I'd be like, "No, I won't." But really, I think over the course of undergrad, and I got a master's degree at the London School of Economics, and I really thought I was going to become an economist and do social policy. And I don't know, I just realized both that I didn't want to spend my whole day cleaning data only to run it and have my like regressions break. My favorite part of the day was like meeting up with my friends at the pub afterwards, because it's England, everyone ends up at the pub afterwards, and like talking about the policy intervention I was hoping to support, or like what kind of advocacy I was hoping to like strengthen with the research. And yeah, I also thought that kind of the theory of change that I had going into that work was like, oh, if I can just show really strong empirical results, then like naturally the policy will follow. But that's not the case, you know? You really, it's not just enough to like have empirical findings, have empirical facts. You really need to advocate for the world you want, or for the changes you want to see. And you know, I think a lot of law school is developing those advocacy skills, and a lot of the kind of work you do as a legal academic is about, I think at the end of the day, just understanding the way that law is how we structure our social world. And so we want to change the structure of that social world. That involves changing laws. So yeah, that's kind of my very intellectual origin story, I suppose. But yeah, that's how I ended up here.